Hello, this video will be a complete explanation of ControlNet use in Stable Diffusion. As you might already know, that ControlNet is used to better control the transfer of a style from one image to another in Stable Diffusion. The video will include the following: installation and setup tips, explanation of each model, such as depth, canny, open pose, etc., with examples, batch ControlNet for generation of large number of images based on poses or reference set of images using a single text prompt. We will also produce some tips about text processing, video generation, and multiple ControlNet application. So let's begin. Now, for installation of ControlNet, we would go to extensions, we would go to available, load from, we just click load from, then we search for ControlNet. We can see that ControlNet is down here. This is ControlNet. We just press install. Now, once installation is complete, we can apply and restart. Once we installed ControlNet, we would see it down here. So we see here that this is ControlNet graphical user interface. We will explain it and see initially that we have lots of preprocessors. We'll explain some of them, or the most important and the used ones. And for the models, we can see initially we do not have any models. Okay, so we can download each of these models separately from the Hugging Face account. To download the models, we come to ControlNet version 1.1 and download these files, which are BTH. This is the BTH is basically like the safe tensors. It's the model itself. The YAML is basically the configuration file. We download these files. We can download all of them, which is better. Okay, if we have disk space, if we don't have enough disk space, we just download the models that we want to use, such as canny, depth, and open pose, for instance. Okay, now we click on this icon to download the model. We'd save as. We would come to WebUI extensions, SD WebUI ControlNet. Then we go to models and save it down here. It's also better to download the YAML, even if it's there already, just to make sure that it is there and the name has not changed. If it's there, okay, let's overwrite it just in case. We would come back to, now regarding the naming, when we come here, we can see that Control version 1.1, this is the version. E, it means that it's experimental. P, it means it's production ready. Once the download is complete, go back to Automatic 11.11 and press refresh. We would see all the models down here. So ControlNet basically tries to control the image generation, which is often generated by Stable Diffusion and has other uses as well. For example, we could go to any website such as 3Pic or Pixels and get an image and try to generate an image similar to this image in terms of poses or the shape of the person, or the shape of the object, or the shape of the architecture, and use it in ControlNet as a reference image. For example, we can drag drop, for instance, like this one. So when you want to imitate the image, we drag it to this location. We can see here that we can remove the image. We can undo any changes here. There are a couple of buttons. We will explain them. Okay, if we want to enable ControlNet, we must press this for sure. If we don't press it, ControlNet will not function. If we have a low VRAM, we press this one. Pixel Perfect will try to read the dimensions of this image. So it's very important for the dimensions of the image to be limited. Allow preview will give us the preprocessor output. So what is a preprocessor? A preprocessor is it will work on the pixel space. So for example, this image, if we use canny, it will try to detect the edges of this picture and put it down here. For example, if press run preprocessor, we can see the output of the preprocessor. So you can test with these, for example. Just run the review processor and see what it produces. Now, regarding these buttons, for ControlNet, okay, the default is 1. So the higher this value is, the stronger the ControlNet will become. The lower, it will become weaker. Now, we can start ControlNet, for example, for instance, after 10% of the steps. For example, if we run 100 steps and we want the first 10 steps to be generated without ControlNet, we put here 0.1. Now we can also stop the ControlNet, for example, after 50% of the total steps, which is down here. Okay, so by default this is 0 to 1, so that ControlNet will be controlling the image generation from the beginning till the end. Now for the preprocessor resolution, like I've said, if we enable pixel perfect, it will rely on the resolution of this image. Okay. Now some of these settings will change depending on the values here or the preprocessor being used. So these settings will change. For example, when the Canny threshold changes, this is how many edges the image will be, okay, how many edges we will detect. For example, for Canny, if we reduce the threshold, it will try to detect as many edges as possible. Okay. On the other hand, if we want to reduce the edges being detected, we can increase this value, and we will see that less edges will be detected. Now, when we have more edges being detected, that means we will have more control. Okay, so if we want our image to be more like, as much as possible like this one, we have to reduce the threshold, for example. Okay. Now, regarding control net mode, by default it's balanced, so it balances between the prompt and the control net. If we want control net to have stronger effect, we would use this. Okay. Now, resize mode, because the size of the image down here could be different from the size of the image down here, this can create some issues. So it's perfect. It's better if both images have the same size. Otherwise, we can apply something like crop and resize and fill. For example, if the image here is smaller, it will fill the image. Okay. So let's explain these one by one. When we press enable, for example, press Canny, we can see that it detects the edges, okay, like this. So the image being generated will try to be as much as possible like this one. So it will change the hairstyle because the image includes the hairstyle, for example. Let's generate. We can see that the image has changed and became more like this one. So it has the same hairstyle, the same look, and the same features. So Canny is very strict in terms of image generation. Now, for depth maps, it tries to generate the depth of the picture. So it looks what is near, it makes it very white. What is far, it will make it less, so more like black. Okay, so this is like a distance-based model. Now let's press generate and see what depth map produces. So we can see that it produces almost the same picture, but with more freedom regarding the picture. For normal maps, it's more like a 3D, so it respects the structure of the image more in a 3D model, like 3D models. Now, sometimes when you choose a certain model and try to run it, it will download some information in order to complete the generation. So it might take a little bit of time, but this is done only for one time. So we can see here that the depth map is producing something more like a 3D geometry. So normal maps are better in geometry-based image generations. So when we try to generate the image, it basically produces similar output, okay? But this can be different from one image to another, but the 3D structure of the face will be more visible with normal maps. Open pose is basically just reads the pose of this image. So when we apply a preprocessor, for example, it reads the facial features where the eye is looking, okay, the neck, the shoulder, and the full body. So it's just related to people and characters, okay? So when we press generate, the same picture is produced, but only the position it changes. So we can see here, for example, the hair did not change, the person did not change, just the position of the character. So it changes just the pose of the character. So this is more clear with full body positions. So for example, when we put a full body and use the preprocessor, we can see that it has read the position of the body. So it's just about characters, okay? So it reads when we use open pose full. Now there are multiple options. Full will include the face, the hands, and the body, everything, okay? Face only it will only include the face. The face here will include the body and the face. The hand will include the hand details, okay? So it will not have many details for the face. So each of these have its own use case, but open pose full is the most used one, okay? So we can see here that it has produced a skeleton. So when we try to generate the image, we get something like this, which is the same pose as here, okay? Of course, the face here, because the picture is very small, it needs to be fixed with After Detailer in order to produce the same face once again. For example, if we put a building here and try to run the preprocessor, we can see that it does not produce any image. Another use case for OpenPose is not to use the preprocessor at all and just use none. So for example, if we have a pose like this one, okay, which is ready, prepared, so we don't need preprocessor anymore. This will speed up the generation. Okay, now when we press generate, we can see that the image produce something like this. Or we need to compose the pose using OpenPose editor, for instance, which allows us to change the pose. OpenPose editor is just a standard extension. You just go to the extension and install this extension. Okay, it allows you to create any kind of pose or just use ready-to-use poses from online resources. Now, I want to point out a very important usage of canny depth or normal maps, for example, for text, even in Stable Diffusion 1.5. For example, if we prepare a simple text on photo editing software and paste it here, we can copy paste actually, okay, from clipboard. We use canny and use a simple, for example, enable, a simple prompt, generate. Now, MLSD is used for architecture. MLSD is used for architecture. It is only used to detect straight lines. Okay, so for example, we can see the preview. We can see that it has only detected the straight lines in this picture. So anything that is round or curved is not detected. So it's very good for architecture, especially for modern buildings. We can see how it converted this structure into this, which is, so for example, if we try to use it on this one, it will not detect the curves. So it produces something like this, which is quite useless. Now, for line art, it can be used on real pictures or on anime or anything that is hand-drawn. So if we have something like this, it will convert it into something like hand drawing, okay, or something like this. We can also use hand drawing, same goes with the scribbles, and generate a picture based on this. For example, for this picture, so it converts this into a line, something like line art, then it produces the picture based on the prompt. The same goes for Scribble, with Scribble also, but this is a simpler drawing, so we can use actually something like MS Paint. So for Scribble, it produces something like this. If we do it, for example, on MS Paint, we can actually copy this image. Anything simple that we draw by hand, for example, paste it here, pixel perfect, then generate an image. So we can see that this is the image that was based on this. So we can see that it has something like a crown or something, or ears or whatever. Now, SoftEdge is producing something like this in the preprocessor. It is kind of close enough to line art, but it's like softer, so the edges are a little bit softer and have less details, which will produce more freedom in the output. So we can see the output of this result is very close to this one. Okay, so it respects the edges and have softer edges in general. Now for this is segmentation, so it tries to detect the objects that are found in the picture, for example. So we can see that with segmentation, it found an object, which is the person, and background object. So it splits the image into two objects. So when we try to generate the image, we can see that we have more freedom because the woman will only be fit inside this object here and have more freedom, and the background can become free. For example, for this building, we can see that it has detected a building as one segment. It has detected plants as different segments. So these are plants. This is the foreground. This is the background. So as one object. So basically segmentation into different objects, which allows more freedom in the image generation while holding the overall general structure of the picture. Now for shuffle, it shuffles the image itself. So it like composes the picture, it recomposes it. It brings this part down here, that part down up there, etc. So it's very useful to generate interesting pictures and to be used with another control net. For example, to use the first control net with shuffle, the second with canny, it produces really very interesting pictures, as we will display later. Okay, now we make sure that the model is correctly checked. We will use pixel perfect. Let's check the preview. We can see that it mixed this picture. Let's enable it and produce a result. Now we can see that it mixed the old picture with the new, with this one based on the shuffle. So some of the banners are up, not on the side like this. So it shuffled the picture and rearranged everything, producing a new picture that is really interesting. So it has the same depth as this street, but with shuffled banners, stores, etc. Now for tile, tile is basically about changing the details of the picture. So despite having a prompt here, the details of the picture could be changed with help of tile. So in cases of if we want to resize the picture, downsample it, we can reduce the details by downsampling rate. For example, if you want, if we produce a picture here with 1, we get something like this. So this is with downsample of 1. If we use the sampler up to 8, the details would become less. Now we can see that here the details, if we compare them closely, they produce less details. This is very useful in case we want to generate videos, for example, because videos we need less details in order to reduce flickering. Now for the inpaint, this can be used actually to do inpainting with the help of ControlNet. It could also be used for outpainting. Okay, so for example, if we have a picture generated in Stable Diffusion, like this one, we can actually drag and drop it down here, or use completely a new picture and use this picture instead. For example, if we use this picture, we can actually increase the size of the picture down to 1024, use something like resize and fill, enable ControlNet, then press generate, and hopefully it can actually do an outpaint. This does not work all the time, however. So we can see here that it did some outpaint. It increased the image up and down slightly without changing the original picture. So this can be used for inpaint or for outpaint. If you want to use it for inpaint, we can do something like inpainting like this. Now for pixel to pixel, this is a very interesting experimental ControlNet model. It basically takes a picture and just convert it pixel by pixel into something else. For example, if we have a building like this, we can make it in a winter or in the summer or burning. So the same picture remains as it is, but the effect is added. For example, make it burning, make it winter. So we can see here that this is the same picture, okay? This is the same picture, but it made it like winter. So this is one of the most interesting models in my opinion, okay? We can see that now it is burning. So we can see here that this is the same picture. Now for reference only, so for example, if we have this simple picture and we want to transfer the style of this picture onto this picture, which is a woman open her mouth or laughing, smiling, we can enable ControlNet, drag the picture here, and try to generate. We don't always get the result that we want, but here we can see that it basically transferred the style. So we got something red, we got something open mouth, smiling. This can be done to any kind of picture. For example, if we have a city here, we can use another city which is like a city light at night and try to transfer the style of this picture into this one. So we can see that the style partially transferred. It preserved some of the features of the old image, but it is at night, it's not blue, so we do not get the results that we were hoping to get. But this is the point. It just tries to transfer the style or the pose of the character, laughing, smiling, etc. Now, in order to enable multiple control nets like this, so that the input of one becomes, the output of the first becomes input to the next, we go to settings. We would go to control net, this one down here. Then we play with this slider. So initially it's on 1. We can make it up to 4, for example, if we want to have 4 control nets at the same time. We click apply settings and reload the user interface, and we get something like this. For example, if we in the first control net we put a city with night lights, with blue night lights, and use shuffle, for example, as input to this Iron Man, for example, and we use depth or canny, for example, and try to generate the output based on this. So it should produce an Iron Man, but it will take the shuffle of this picture as a method to color the Iron Man, for example, or produce some kind of effect. So I adjusted the width and height so we can get something like this. So we can see that this is the Iron Man picture. Now it becomes like this because it gained colors and features from that picture. The city has been shuffled partially. That means that some buildings have different locations and different. Now there's also something called batch. Okay, batch processing is very important if we want to generate large number of pictures based on certain input. For example, if we have pictures like this, okay, of different pictures of different people having different poses, and I want to apply all these poses to a single prompt in Stable Diffusion. So I will just put patch and put this input directory as input directory here, enable ControlNet, use Canny for example, and use a simple prompt. For example, I want a pretty woman wearing a Spider-Man suit with all these poses. So we just put the prompt. We can also enable after detailer in order to produce better results of the face and generate. And the output would be going to the output image directory. So this can also be applied if we are planning, for example, if we have a pose book, for example, like this, we have 200 poses or 199 poses. So if we click on the folders here, we can see it down in this location and check the generated pictures. Now, ControlNet could also be used in image to image in the same methodology. Okay, it could be used for producing videos based on input video by converting the input video into frames, then converting it using the same style to output frames, then combining them to produce a video. Now, I just want to point out that in case of open pose and that we have a pose book, for example, if we have the poses already already prepared, then we don't need to select the preprocessor. Hopefully this video was useful, and have a good day.